Good morning, YouTube. This morning is a remake of a live stream that I did this morning with X-Plane 11. I was intending to, or hoping rather, that I would begin the flight on an aircraft carrier that we landed on yesterday and then take off from there and land at Camp Pendleton. However, X-Plane 11 had me at MCall, what is it, hang on one second now. X-Plane had me at KNXF airport and not on the aircraft carrier, so I decided instead that I would do a flyby Camp Pendleton and then fly to Palm Springs and land there. And that was a nice flight, and it recorded all of my audio, but it got hung on the GPS 530 screen and did not progress from there, and that was right at the airport. So I decided I'd go ahead and remake this video using Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and have a look at what it looks like using Flight Simulator 2020. All right, let me get this bird started and we'll get it in the air, and I'll tell you a little bit about, I might mention some of the same things that I mentioned in the other video. However, I do think I will end up deleting it in the end and replacing it with this one. So mixture is set 20% on the throttle. I don't know why it gyrates and moves back and forth like that. It's kind of weird. Let's see, these are on. So we just need to turn the key, I think. Alright, I'm going to step outside the aircraft for a second and make sure that the ailerons, rudders, and flaps and yaw are all functioning properly. Alright, that looks good. Now, where is the runway relative to our position? Behind us? Or are we on it? I guess we're on it, so we'll take off from right here. I'm setting 2 stages of flaps, and I'm going to turn the brakes off here. In X-Plane 11, this runway is actually paved and not grass and dirt as it is being depicted here. This is probably more or less how it really is. It was also a very short runway, and I had to rotate right as I got to the end of it. So I intend to do the same thing, just as I did this morning, rotating. Flaps are coming up. Okay, and what I should have done but did not was go ahead and set my my radio, and that actually might take me a minute to figure out. Okay, so we are going to fly to 115.5 nav radio. It is PSP is the name. 5.5. I had to climb to about 10,000 feet to get over those mountains, so I intend on doing that this morning too. You know, I was coming up on them and thinking, well, I better increase my altitude, so knowing that it's necessary. Okay. And I did have to fly a little distance to the VOR first before it actually showed up. What I ended up doing was inputting it into the GPS and flying to it that way. Let's see, I never can, in Microsoft Flight Simulator, I can't really see. We'll do vertical speed, 500 feet per minute, and I'll climb to 10,000 feet. I should have said all this before I took off, and I did not. Alright, we're going to do a bearing of 042 degrees. this display over here. We'll zoom out some so that speed's still looking good and the plane is moving around. Okay, that's better. So it's making it harder to adjust the knob there. Okay, we are not following the heading here. Did I not turn autopilot on? A mistake there. You get to catch me in my mistakes when I live stream, and that's partly why I like live streaming, so that I can see my mistakes, adjust. If y'all notice anything while I'm flying and you want to call me out on it, please leave a comment. And while you're there, like and subscribe. And if there's any particular flight you'd like to see me do, leave that in a comment as well. Let me know. If you see me do a mistake and I happen to miss it during flight, call me out on it. I would like to know. I'm not the real world expert pilot, nor am I an expert flight sim pilot. I do enjoy flying around. It's one of my favorite pastimes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit, it's not showing up yet. Let me change the CDI as well, because we're flying VOR. And then I think that's nav. So nav mode is on. So if it does happen to pick up on the VOR station, it should fly to it. I'm just going to kind of watch the multifunction display here to verify that we are in fact flying in the right direction, but with us being at a relative heading of the 042 degrees from, actually, you know what? Let's fly over to KNFG. We don't need to. I won't do that, sorry. Can't seem to make up my mind. We'll just continue flying VOR1 to, we did land at KNFG. Well, we were going to land at KNFG. We ended up landing on the aircraft carrier instead. We did get a visual on KNFG. So during the flight for the X-Plane 11 video that I was doing this morning, I was discussing some of the flights that I had plans or intends on doing in the future, and I got to talking about the California area a little bit and Joshua trees. They're an interesting tree to me because to me they're like the desert's version, or the desert's rendition, nature's rendition of a bonsai. Only this is a tree. It kind of looks like a palm tree, but it's a very shorter version, and it sprouts off in several different directions. So you know, just to me, it just reminds me of a bonsai when I look at a Joshua tree. It's a very interesting tree. So upon landing in Palm Springs, I was taxiing, and lo and behold, there was a Joshua tree. And granted, we are in the area where Joshua trees could be spotted, but I was not expecting to actually spot a Joshua tree at Palm Springs. So that just was purely coincidental that I happened to bring it up and then also see a Joshua tree in the same flight. So I don't know. I'm hoping that in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 we'll also see a Joshua tree, just as I did in X-Plane 11. And if not, and if y'all are interested, you know, leave me a comment. Let me know whether or not you want me to redo this video again in X-Plane 11 to have an idea of what it looks like in comparison to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. So at this point, I am not at all certain that we are flying in the general direction, but I don't feel confident that it actually has picked up on the waypoint. In X-Plane 11, I had to fly several miles before it finally did. But right now what I'm using is visuals. What I remember from the flight in X-Plane 11, and I had to fly to 10,000 feet because I was heading towards, the mountains. And then after I got over the mountains and was at 10,000 feet, about that time is when I found the Palm Springs Valley on the other side of that mountain. So I imagine once I fly over these mountains here, we'll be in the Palm Springs area. I'll get a visual on the runway. I can check with ATIS again. I don't remember what the station was for ATIS, so I'll need to look that up. Bear with me 1 second while I check. Looks like the ATIS is 124.65. So let's program that into the comms here. And we already have 124, so we just need 65. Oops, messed that up. It's a really touchy. It's a lot harder to do, I think, in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 in comparison to X-Plane and working with, because you can actually click on the screen and detach it, and then it's not, moving around as the aircraft moves, and it's easier to adjust the knobs. 124.65, is that what I said? Check again. 124.65. Alright, let's switch that. And once we're within range of ATIS, Okay, so the altimeter is already set to 29902, and I'll actually be landing in the opposite direction that I did in X-Plane 11. When I did ATIS in X-Plane 11, it wanted me to land at runway 130. So in this instance, we'll be landing the opposite end of the runway. And we can use either 33 left or 33 right. So upon the approach, I will choose which side to land on. I typically choose the left. So that's probably what I'll do this morning. I don't think that I've ever been to Palm Springs, but upon seeing it in X-Plane 11, it made me want to go there and visit. Decided to start the flight at dawn this morning. Instead, I had been doing the flights around 9 a.m., but as I was adjusting the time, and I saw how nice it looked, I was like, I think I might like to do a dawn flight. And the flight took about an hour, so by the time we get to Palm Springs, the sun should be up well enough to have really good visibility. Of course, it's not bad right now, even as it is. If there's anybody out there that's interested in seeing these same videos with flight gear, for a comparison of what it looks like in flight gear, I mean, I can say up front that it won't look as nice, definitely, as Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, but in some instances it doesn't look so bad in flight gear either. It's their graphics, are improving. Their Flight Gear 2020 3.5, one that the stable release that they have out right now, if you max out the graphics settings, well, it's definitely a resource hog, but it's looking pretty good. I mean, the buildings still look like they did in 2018, but they're getting there. Um, and it's still fun to do. Like when I fly around in flight gear, I sometimes, like I flew around an area that I went for some training years ago to Vienna, Virginia, and we flew right by the Pentagon, and then landed at the airport there. I do not remember which airport it was. Um, I could probably look it up and then tell you, but I don't know right offhand. In any case, I was flying in flight gear, and I inadvertently flew into that area, that region, and I just started recognizing the landmarks, even in flight gear. You know, as bad as, or as not as good as their graphics are in comparison to, you know, the pay-for simulators, I was still getting these visual cues from the surrounding area, and I was like, this looks familiar to me. And so I landed at the airport, and it turned out to be the very same airport that I landed at, um, you know, when I went for the training years ago. Now, in flight gear, I did not see the Pentagon or anything like that, and I don't know if they would depict that in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 or X-Plane 11. Maybe they would. I don't know if there's any, you know, governing restrictions on that due to the nature of that sort of building. And, you know, due to what happened in 2001, 9/11, and the planes flying into the World Trade Centers, you know, you would kind of wonder whether or not they would actually show those sorts of things in a flight simulator. But they may. When I'm flying around Sydney, you can see the Opera House and the bridge. Now, in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, the bridge did not look like it does in real life, but in X-Plane 11, the Opera House and the bridge there in that area, YSSY was the name of the airport I flew out of, but it's in Sydney, Australia. It looked very much like the real thing. Very cool, and maybe sometime I'll do a video on that. We're at 8,000 feet, and I still don't know that we have picked up on that nav station. Let me verify that it is 115.5. 115.5, I'm not mistaken in that. That doesn't mean that waypoint will work in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Now we are losing airspeed, so I am going to change my vertical speed here. And of course we're coming out of autopilot, so I'm going to take control, nose down here, gain some airspeed, and then we'll continue our climb to 10,000 feet. Trim it some. I'm fighting the aircraft to keep it nose down a little bit. So we have picked up some speed. Turning the autopilot back on. Vertical speed, I want it to be, it still came out, vertical speed lowered here. So yeah, it keeps kicking me out of autopilot for some reason. Off, not on. Maybe it doesn't like being at this altitude. It didn't give me any issues in X-Plane 11. We're seems to want to nose up for some reason. So let me do vertical speed again. Vertical speed on. Just try to get it Autopilot is on. Yeah, see, it keeps nosing up on me for some reason. Not sure what I'm doing wrong there. I know I wanted it at 10,000, but I have the vertical speed for the climb set at 300 feet per minute, so it shouldn't be exceeding that. While I have it on autopilot, yet it is. I've got the RPM set to full here. I can't give it any more power. So I'm applying some force to the yoke to keep it nose down, and I'm trying to give it some trim so that I can release the pressure off of the yoke. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe the trim is hung. It seems to be working slowly but surely. I might actually be able to let go of the yoke for the autopilot. I'll have to look at the specs for the Cessna to see what its ceiling cap is. I really don't know. Maybe it's not meant to fly at 10,000 feet. I didn't seem to have any issue while I was flying in X-Plane 11, as I mentioned. And I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is program Palm Springs into the GPS, because I am not at all certain that we are flying there anymore. I think we would have intercepted the VOR at this point. And that might be unlikely too, because I didn't actually set the bearing for the VOR at the heading it should have been. But we are, let's see, I'm on there. Now we're so far out I can't see anything. I don't know what that is, but that might be the Palm Springs Airport. So yeah, let's input that into the GPS. I'll do PSP for the waypoint. And let me get a good... We're at 9,300, climbing for 10. Speed isn't dropping too badly, so I'm going to focus on the okay, turn it on. There we go. E. And now the outer. Did I say PSP? Yeah, it's a challenge for me to work with the GPS in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now that doesn't seem to like, I'm going to see, I don't think it's going to take that. NDB, okay, good. VOR. And then we may need to do, no, I don't want to delete the flight band. I want to, okay, this is not working out for me this morning. Let's do KPSP then. Come on then. And we're probably going to stall while I'm trying to do this. We're all going to die. One more. E. Palm Springs. All right. Yes, I know. I know. Well, we were almost at 10,000. We were 1,000 below. Trying to trim it. Get it to nose down some so I don't have to give it so much pressure on the yoke. Let's switch the CDI back over to GPS. And we can't really see that one. I was wanting to activate the leg. I might settle for 9,500 feet. So let's do an altitude hold. If I can find the button for the altitude hold. Light level change, approach, altitude. There it is. Now, level out. Come on. Flying should not be this hard, and it typically isn't. I don't know why I'm struggling with it so much, except for the fact that I'm at a higher altitude. So, autopilot, altitude. Doing a lot of trimming again so I can release the pressure on the yoke. See, it just wants to go out of control on me. I don't. Well, I may hand fly it, since I'm having this much trouble. Those are maybe just graphics adjusting. I was seeing something on the peaks in front of me and getting curious about it. About the time I got curious, it went away. Turning off the flight director. That was interesting. I was not expecting that button to do that. what I'm trying to do is just get over these mountains and then get down into the valley there and descend. And it thinks I'm flying from KPSP to PSP, which I inputted as PSP, and then I guess it flip-flopped it on me. But in any case, I'm looking at the distance, and I am heading towards it, 18.3 nautical miles. So maybe down in that valley after just as I said, getting over the higher altitudes of these mountains and then into the valley. And I do see KPSP now showing up on the multifunction display. So we are heading in the right direction, albeit with a little issue from the autopilots. And it might be me, it might be a user error as opposed to a Microsoft Flight Simulator issue. I am prone to error. I think you've already seen me make a couple of mistakes in this video. I make mistakes every day. Not afraid to admit it. I do try to avoid mistakes, but that doesn't always pan out in my favor either. Body of water over there, buildings. Be interesting to live on the side of that mountain. Or perhaps it's considered a canyon since it's in California, I don't know. So, one of the things I really like, well, throttle control's in my way, so let me move that. You know, we can actually see the mountains there in the primary display. I think that's kind of cool. What do I call that? Throttle? The yoke there. I had to remove the yoke. Alright, about the time I get over these mountains, I am going to throttle back and descend quickly as possible to get to about 5,000 feet. See if I can't get this aircraft in better control than I currently have it. It's like the trim is just hung in a certain position, so I'm having to put a lot of pressure on the yoke to keep it nose down. And no matter how much trim I do, it doesn't seem to be helping. So I will try to descend as quickly as possible, but not overspeed. So my throttle is basically off. We're just gliding downwards. There's certainly a lot more in the city out here than there was in... I didn't really fly around and look though, I was mainly focused on the airport, but it just seems like as I'm coming over these mountains there's a lot more to look at than there was in X-Plane 11. It looked good in X-Plane 11, but it just looks busier now in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Trim it some more. And start to level off here in a minute. Giving it some more power. And as I'm giving it power, I'm releasing the pressure on the yoke. What are those things over there? That's kind of cool. I might do a flyby of that. Trimming. A lot of trimming. Pressure on the yoke, hoping that this thing, see, it's nosing up on me again. Trimming, trimming, we are losing airspeed, but I'm trimming. So it seems like something is up with the trim this morning for some reason. I don't rightly know. Sure. So what are those, wind turbines for power? That's what it looks like. I don't see any of them spinning. Oh yeah. As we get closer, they're starting to rotate. Where is that runway? Right by us. Yeah, we certainly didn't see all these wind turbines in X-Plane 11. So this is kind of interesting to me. And in California, you do tend to see a lot of these. You could be traveling, I don't remember on what interstate, maybe 40, 80, but you can see wind turbines when traveling those roads. And I've never seen this many all at one time, though. That's pretty amazing. Do a hard left. And I should be approaching this runway from the other direction. I'm basically doing the same landing that I did in X-Plane 11 this morning. I'm deploying some flaps. First stage of flaps here, slow the aircraft down some and to increase drag.
500.
Second stage of flaps deployed. Give it a little bit more power. according to the PAPI lights, we're above the glide slope, but I feel good on it. It seemed low. Of course, the PAPI lights for the other runway over there have us as low, so I'm giving it a little more power. We saw some McDonnell Douglas Phantom F4s here this morning in X-Plane 11. Well, I did. If it had live streamed correctly, you would have seen it as well. Right. I think I'll exit stage right here. Flaps are coming up. All right, I will do a replay. Unfortunately, I can't do that in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. That is one of the features I really miss. I like to replay and watch my landing. See the moon there. All right, YouTube. I'll see you next time.